𝗪𝗲𝗪andasya ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चादेशतारिणे। Okay, so we are discussing renunciation from Bhagavad Gita. It's a very big, vast and complex topic, because what we as Gaudiya Vaishnavas think of renunciation, that is very, very different from the concept of renunciation of jnanis and yogis. There's a lot of difference there. So what do we mean by renunciation? I mean to say, we said renunciation according to Bhagavad Gita, but Shankara's interpretation of renunciation from Bhagavad Gita is very different. Our concept of renunciation from Bhagavad Gita is very different. Our means Vaishnavas. And on the top of it, and on the top of that, Gaudiya Vaishnava's renunciation concept is very, very different. So what is renunciation? Let's talk about it. In general, renunciation, this concept of renunciation, Arjuna asked Krishna in the 18th chapter, what is 𝗙𝗪 and what is sannyas? This is a very pertinent question. What is 𝗙𝗪 and what is sannyas? Now both 𝗙𝗪 and sannyas, we think of them as renunciation, both of them. But Krishna answers, well, Krishna said, a sannyasi may not be tyagi, but a tyagi can be sannyasi. He said that. Why? Because sannyas is external renunciation. It's a particular kind of order in varnashrama. You leave your house, you take a particular dress, you become a monk, and that is external renunciation. But there is internal renunciation, which is called as 𝗙𝗪. That means you have internally renounced things. You might have externally renounced your house and your wife, but internally you might be thinking of them. So that can be the case. So that's why there is a concept of internal renunciation and external renunciation in Bhagavad Gita. And this is very important. This is the last chapter and one of the last questions of Arjuna. And I'll tell why this is the last question of Arjuna. There are so many questions Arjuna asked, but this is the last question. Why is it? I'll tell after some time. But the whole point is, renunciation is of two types. Renunciation means leaving something. You're leaving something voluntarily. You're voluntarily quitting something. Just like, for example, when people join ISKCON, then they don't drink tea. So what we say? We have renounced drinking tea. We have left drinking tea. That's the idea there. So renunciation means voluntarily leaving something. So externally, if you leave something, your house and your whatever I mean to say, possessions, that is sannyas. But internally, if you leave something, that is called as 𝗙𝗪. Internally means, so what you can leave internally? Attachments, your desire, that is called 𝗙𝗪. Like, so I'll give example. So leaving drinking tea, that is, for example, sannyas. Externally, okay, I don't want to drink tea from today. But we might maintain the desire to drink that tea. That's a very different thing. So so in that case, we have externally renounced tea, but internally we have not renounced tea. So externally, so as far as sannyas is concerned, we have taken sannyas from tea, but we have not taken 𝗙𝗪 from tea, because we want to drink tea. That's the whole idea there. So internal and external renunciation, that's the most important thing there. So Arjuna asks Krishna, what is important? External renunciation, internal renunciation. Krishna says, well, both are important, but the most important thing is internal renunciation. Because if you externally renounce something, and if you maintain a desire to enjoy that within your heart, then you are not really renounced, then you are 𝗙𝗪𝗀𝗪𝗀, you are hypocrite. So Krishna says you should, but sannyas is okay, but you should focus on 𝗪𝗪. If you are internally renounced, then automatically you are externally renounced. If you don't have a desire to drink tea, then you will not drink tea. You see, so other way around it's better. So that is 𝗪𝗪 and sannyas. So that is called renunciation in general sense, very general sense. But there's one more verse in Bhagavad Gita. What is that? 𝗪𝗲 𝗪𝗲𝗪𝗔 विषयाविनिवर्तन्ते निराहारस्य देहिनः 𝗪𝗲 𝗪𝗲𝗪𝗔 param drishtva nivartate. That's one verse from Bhagavad Gita. And Krishna says in that verse, Vishyavinevartante niraharasya dehinah rasvarjam rasopyasya. Krishna says, well, until unless you don't take higher taste, you will maintain lower taste. Even if you leave the object, but you will maintain the taste of it. And Krishna says it takes time to leave the taste. So what should we do? So Krishna says, well, first you think of anyway, and just forget it. So sannyas is easy, but 𝗪𝗪 is difficult. Sannyas is easy, but 𝗪𝗪 is difficult. You can leave things, but to leave the desire to enjoy those things, that's very difficult. For example, lust. Now we can leave seeing bad movies or bad things, but we maintain a desire to enjoy things. That's there in the heart. So in that sense, we should, Mahaprabhu orders, Krishna says, you should focus on 𝗪𝗪, focus on desires. And then Krishna says, 𝗪𝗲 𝗪𝗲𝗪𝗔, but how to leave those desires and attachments? Krishna says, well, the trick of 𝗪𝗪 is develop higher taste, develop higher desires. So you will be able to leave lower desires. Now here I just want to add one point that Krishna says, 𝗪𝗲 𝗪𝗲𝗪𝗔, develop higher taste and then you can lose lower taste. So what's the meaning of that? The meaning of that is higher taste and lower taste. So the meaning of that is, the meaning of this is, taste, higher taste doesn't mean necessarily happiness. We equate ras with happiness, but that's not the point there. No. Higher taste is not happiness. Higher taste can also be sadness. Higher taste can also be wisdom, philosophy, intellectually. Higher taste can also be morality, virtues. So higher taste doesn't necessarily mean happiness. That is our assumption. Higher taste is happiness. Higher taste can also be fear. We can have higher quality of fear. For example, we can have fear of birth and death. That's a higher taste, isn't it? All the Paramahamsas, they fear birth and death, so they're experiencing higher taste. And because of that, we lose fear. We lose small fears of normal day-to-day problems. We lose fear of that. So higher taste refers to so many other things. That's very important to understand. So higher taste has all emotions in it, not just happiness. That's my idea there. And that's it. So if you read Ante Leela, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is experiencing all types of emotions. He's experiencing happiness, he's experiencing sorrow, being feeling of rejection of Krishna. That's higher sorrow. Lower type of sorrows is, I lose my friend, I lose my wife, I lose my money on bodily platform. But higher type of sorrow is on spiritual platform, I have lost Krishna. So that's higher taste. So by taking higher taste, lose lower taste. That's what Krishna says. That is the trick of 𝗙𝗪, internal renunciation. This is a very important point we should keep in mind. Otherwise, we don't advance. We will not be able to practice proper renunciation. Okay, so that is one understanding of renunciation according to Bhagavad Gita. But then if you go deeper into what is renunciation, what is renunciation actually? It's not just renouncing your desires and renouncing your attachments within your heart. So on a deeper level, renunciation means renouncing your false ego. Prakarte kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha ahankar vimudhatma kartaramiti manyate. So renouncing your false ego, or in other words, renouncing your enjoying tendency. That's a deeper level of renunciation. Why? Because only because of enjoying tendency we develop desires and attachments. So 𝗙𝗲𝗪𝗀𝗃𝗀𝗃, we were reading Bhagavatam. So that's the idea there. So that's a deeper level of renunciation. So we start with renouncing our desires and attachments by taking higher taste, by developing good desires, by developing attachment for Krishna. But then as you advance, you go to a deeper level. You want to renounce the enjoying tendency, a false ego. Enjoying tendency means false ego. Due to false ego, we think, I am the enjoyer, independent of Krishna. So that is one renunciation. That is on a deeper level renunciation, Krishna says. So we should always go to deeper levels of renunciation. We should not stick to one level. Okay, fine. I've left drinking tea. I've left drinking drinking tea. I've left illicit sex. Left gambling. So I'm practicing renunciation. Yeah, that's renunciation, but that's on a very gross level. That is sannyas. You have left things. But that is not 𝗙𝗪. You have not left the desire. You have not left the desire to do those things. So go on a deeper level. And then, but then you have left, even if you have left the desire to enjoy, even if you have left the desire to drinking tea, but the tendency to enjoy things, that enjoying tendency is there. You have left the desire to drink tea, but you have desires for other things also. How many desires you will leave? So better go to the root. Leave enjoying tendency. So that is another deeper level of renunciation, leaving enjoying tendency. And Krishna and Bhagavatam, Krishna says, how do you leave that enjoying tendency? 𝗙𝗪𝗪𝗃𝗀𝗃. By sankalp, by determination, Prabhupada says. By determination that I will not enjoy this material world, slowly the grip of enjoying tendency, that will loosen. We will no longer want to enjoy things. That is a deeper level of renunciation. But then, if you really think about it, you can go to another deeper level of renunciation. Another deeper level. And yet, more deeper level of renunciation is actually to renounce, what can I say? How do I put it? In the case of gopis, the gopis are Krishna's best devotees. And what they have renounced? They have renounced, one thing they have renounced which nobody can renounce, that is self-prestige. Yeah. That is another much deeper level of renunciation, self-prestige. It might seem easy, but it's not easy. To get free of lust is easy, but to get free of puja 𝗬𝗪 pratishtha, that's very difficult. But they renounced self-prestige. Gopis, Krishna called them in the middle of night. Why did he do that? To actually test their devotion, whether they can renounce their self-prestige. Because for the female to go in the middle of night, especially household females, and to go to some other male, the dead of night, that's a very, very, it's not at all prestige. It's like bringing defamy to your whole family. But they did that. So renounce a desire for self-honor, for self-prestige. That's another deeper level of renunciation. But self-prestige means self. So the deepest level of renunciation is to renounce yourself. That's all. I know Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Ami to amar nahi nath. I don't belong to myself. That sense of belonging to yourself, you belong to yourself, that sense, I belong to myself, that sense has to be renounced. And that is gopis, actually. That is Vrajvasis. For them, they belong to Krishna. They don't belong to themselves. They can die for Krishna millions of times and they'll be happy to die rather than live. They'll be happy to die. They'll happily give their lives if it can please Krishna. That is a test of, I don't belong to myself. You will happily accept sufferings given to you by Krishna because you don't belong to yourself. If we don't belong to ourselves, that means we are slaves of God. And Krishna can sell slaves anywhere to anybody and do anything with his slaves. That's the idea there. That is the highest type of renunciation. Highest type of renunciation. That's what Mahaprabhu says, 𝗙𝗪𝗶𝗹𝗪 vinastumam adarshanam mam nahtam 𝗪𝗪𝗀𝗪. Krishna, you reject me, you actually trample me under your foot, you ignore me, still you will be master birth after birth. This is gopis, and that's where gopis are the best of all renunciates, because they have renounced their own self for Krishna. This Devarshi Narad, he came to Vraj. Gate khola hai kya? So Devarshi Narad came to Vraj and he asked for dust of gopis because Krishna was having headache in Dwarka. And nobody gave the dust of their lotus feet. Lotus feet, I mean, Brahmaji and all these people, they didn't give dust of their feet. Because they said, well, you want to put dust on the head of Krishna? He's having headache, we'll go to hell. This is crazy, we can't think like that. But Narad Muni went to gopis and they asked, gopis said, well, okay, fine. They went to the bank of Yamuna and they put their feet in the sand and they filled sand, bags of sands, and they gave to Narad and they told Narad, you keep it for future also. If future Krishna has headache, you smear the dust on his head. So Narad says, well, you don't know that you will go to hell? Gopi says, who cares for oneself? We care for Krishna. Whatever happens to us, we don't mind. That's not at all a concern what happens to us. The concern is what happens to Krishna. That is the supreme renunciation. Renouncing yourself. Kuch nahi chahiye, just leave it, just sit, that's it. So renouncing oneself, that's the supreme renunciation. So you see the point, all these yogis and jnanis, they are stuck on the sannyas level or maximum tyag level. Vaishnavism goes to the level of renouncing enjoying tendency. But Gaudiya Vaishnavas go to the deepest level of renunciation, that is enjoying oneself. That is renouncing oneself. The sense of belonging of oneself, I belong to myself, that thing has to be renounced. That is the most important thing. I belong to myself. That is the most important thing. Now, how do you do that? That's another question. How do you do that? You can renounce objects by simply being away from them. That's easy. Sannyas is easy. You can renounce desires by developing higher taste, higher desires, higher goals. You can renounce enjoying tendency by determination that I don't want to enjoy. But how can you renounce the sense of belonging to oneself? That is the most important thing. How do you do that? I belong to myself. We feel I am I and I belong to myself. Who else I belong? That's crazy. How do you do that? The only way to do that is love of God. Prem. Prema bhakti jahan hoete avidya vinasha jate. Only by love you can renounce the sense of belonging to oneself. And that is why love of God is the ultimate aim of life. And that is why gopis are the greatest of all jnanis and yogis. Gopis are greatest of all renunciates. And gopis are the best lovers of God. That is why. So this is a conception of renunciation according to Bhagavad Gita. This is the highest conception that I don't belong to myself, to renounce that. And that is why that is why Arjuna asks this question in the last chapter. Krishna, what is higher, tyag or sannyas? And then Krishna takes the concept of tyag and deepens it and come to the point of, well, the best tyag is to renounce the sense of belonging to oneself. 𝗙𝗲𝗹𝗶𝗃 paritajya mam ekam sharanam vraja. That's the whole point. If you really think about that verse in its ultimate depth, that means 𝗙𝗲𝗹𝗋 paritajya. Abandon all your dharma. Dharma means all your duties, because the duties are born of the sense of belonging to oneself. I belong to myself, and then what's my duty? Because I am I. Krishna says, forget that. Sharanagati, surrender to me. Change your sense of belonging. Your Krishna says, your I belongs to me, and my I belongs to you. That is what is real proposal of Krishna. Krishna says, so what's that verse? Whoever sees in me and me in everything. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra, sarvam cha mai pashyati. Was after that, sarvam cha mai pashyati. Anyway, whoever sees me everywhere and whoever sees everything in me, he is the best of devotees, Krishna says, something like that. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra. So there's one more verse in Bhagavad Gita. Where Krishna says, he is in me and I am in him. What's that verse? He is in me and I am in him. There's a verse in so Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, I forgot that verse. He is in me and I am in him. That's a verse there. So that is the whole point. The devotee thinks I belong to Krishna, my I belongs to Krishna. Krishna thinks my I belongs to my devotee. What's that verse? He is in me and I am in him. Sarvam cha mai pashyati, after that? That's different. There's one more verse. The devotee is in me and I am in him. That's very nice verse. Anyway, so that is the ultimate test. So that's why Arjuna asked this question in the last chapter, because he knows this very question will lead to love of God. What is renunciation and what is actually renunciation? This will lead to love of God, especially to love of gopis and Vrajvasis. He exactly knows that. So in that sense, this question becomes very important for us. So that's why renunciation has a lot of dimensions according to Bhagavad Gita. It's not that other levels are wrong. There are levels of renunciation. Starts from sannyas and then tyag, and within tyag, renouncing desires. There's something going on. You have to see. What's happening? So renouncing desires, and then renouncing enjoying tendency, and then renouncing the sense of belonging to oneself. So नीचे करना पड़ेगा थोड़ा. It's not the right thing. It's up. So that is the entire concept of renunciation from Bhagavad Gita, and we have to reach to the ultimate level of renunciation if we have to go back to Godhead. Otherwise, we'll not be able to advance in devotion. In fact, Upanishads sing so much glories of renunciation. So much glories. While people think, oh, renunciation, we are bhaktas, we don't have to care for renunciation, but it's stupid to think like that. Bhakti has the concept of renunciation, bhakti has a concept of knowledge, but our concept of renunciation and knowledge is very different from the concept of renunciation and knowledge which jnanis have. That kind of renunciation which jnanis have, that is rejected. Jnanis and yogis, they are simply interested in sannyas, but not an internal renunciation. That is rejected. Otherwise, renunciation is vairagya vidya nija bhakti yoga 𝗙𝗲𝗹𝗹𝗀𝗀𝗀 Shri Krishna Chaitanya Shariradhari Kripam Buddhim Tamaham Prapatti. So that's the words, the vairagya vidya nija bhakti yoga. Sarvam Bhattacharya, he says a devotion which is ornamented with vairagya, that is renunciation, and vidya, that is knowledge. That is the type of devotion which Mahaprabhu came to preach. It's not ordinary devotion. And that kind of devotion which is ornamented with renunciation and knowledge, that kind of devotion is called as Sharanagati. Sharanagati, which is our process. Devotion which is not ornamented with renunciation and knowledge, that kind of devotion is dry devotion, which Ramanujacharya and Sri Sampradaya rejects. Ritualistic devotion. He says that's wrong, we don't want to do that, we want to do Sharanagati. That's in Sri Sampradaya, Ramanuja. He makes that distinction. So, if we are ornamented with renunciation and knowledge, then we look beautiful to the eyes of Krishna. Otherwise, we don't look beautiful. An ornamented lady, she looks beautiful, isn't it? Lady who is not ornamented, who is not beautiful, she doesn't look beautiful. So we have to dress nicely in front of Krishna. Dress nicely doesn't mean that we have gorgeous dress and we have scent and oil on our hairs. Bhakti Bihari, they do like that. The whole concept is to dress nicely in front of Krishna. So they really dress nicely, but dressing nicely in front of Krishna means you should be ornamented with renunciation, knowledge, and the symptoms of ecstasy. Like Brahmana's wife, when Krishna sent his friends to Mathura to beg food from Brahmana wives, Sukadeva Goswami explains in details how they were sitting, how they were ornamented, what they were talking. And if you read carefully, Sukadeva Goswami is saying they look very beautiful because they had symptoms of ecstasy. That was their ornament. You see? So that's the point there. So that is the concept of renunciation from Bhagavad Gita. Haribol. Yeah, so that is the concept of renunciation from Bhagavad Gita. Just keep in mind all these things. Don't be on a superfluous platform of renunciation. It doesn't serve any purpose. We have to go to the ultimate level of renunciation which gopis have. We are gopi bhartu patkamle or das anudas anudas. We have to hit the root Ashvatthamenam suvirudamulam sangashastrena dridena shitva. Don't try to cut the branches of the tree. For cooking you can do that. But just cut the root of the tree, that's all. Just cut the root of tree and solve the whole problem, that's all. And what's the root of this whole material world? The root is the sense of belonging to oneself. I belong to myself. And the whole solution for that is love of God. That is why Mahaprabhu says, Krishna prem pumarto mahan. You love Krishna. What's that? Mamat. You change the sense of belonging. Now we have sense of belonging that I belong to myself. Just change it. I belong to Krishna. And then the whole problems get solved. Everything gets solved. That is love. So either you can say our aim of life is love of God, or you can say our aim of life is renunciation. It's equally it's the same. Renouncing the sense of belonging to oneself, that is our aim. You can put it that way. So Bhakti Shastras, they say the aim of life is love of God. But Upanishads, they say the aim of life is moksha. Moksha means release. Release from what? Release of the sense of belonging to oneself. That is why Upanishads, they emphasize so much on renunciation. You read Upanishads, again and again they say renounce, 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 renounce. So it's the same thing, exactly the same thing, but different words. So you might well say, why do we need different words? So why they want to confuse us? You can put the same terminology. No. Different words means different angles to see the same problem. So there are different ways to see the same thing. And that's also very important. You have to see all the ways. You have to perceive all the ways to understand God. Because if you leave one way to understand God, if you understand three ways, and if you suppose there are four ways to understand God, and if you leave three, if you practice three, if you understand three ways, three perceptions, and if you leave one way, then what happens is that's a loophole. And Maya will trap us there. That's why Prabhupada says you have to scrutinizingly understand Bhagavatam from all angles. Prabhupada said that, from all angles. In Bhagavatam he says. So love of God, that's one angle to see the whole problem, the whole solution. Renouncing sense of belonging to oneself, that's another angle to see the whole solution. And both are same. That's all. So that's how we should understand the concept of renunciation from Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna. Is there any questions? I'll just stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.